host so she can share her screen. And take it away, Stacey.
All righty, thank you. Before I throw my presentation up there and y'all all get overwhelmed with all the information in it, I just I'll tell a little bit about myself. So yes, I've been with Family Network on Disabilities of Broward County. It is not the same as FND of the state. So they kind of do sort of the same thing, but what we provide, and we're funded by Broward County government, not the school system. Sometimes we are the antithesis of the school system, but it's Broward County government. And that was because Wendy Bellick, who started FND of Broward 30 plus years ago, really found that there was a need in our community when families just needed to be educated on their rights and that they even had rights and then how to exercise those rights. So if you live in a county that you think, wow, we should have that kind of thing, it's funded by them. So that means that people who would never be able to afford an advocate, they get one for free. Now, the way that our contract is written, it's for children with developmental disabilities. So if you had a kid who had like ADD and didn't have any other comorbid conditions, or they had a learning disability without developmental disability, then they would not fall under that contract. But I just tell you this little story because, you know, that all started with one mom going to our county commissioners and saying, we need to help families. So I encourage you, if you are interested in doing such thing, you can do the same thing that she did many years ago. So I do that, and I'm the coordinator for partners in policymaking. So if you don't know about that, I suggest you go to the fddc.org. That is the DD Council, and they fully fund that program. It is an advocacy and leadership training program. And it is amazing. I'm so happy to be coordinating that. I think I'm going into year number 8 now with that. And then I'm the president of the Autism Society of Florida. And I have a 28-year-old son who has autism. And just like any parent that's in this group, you know, a lot of times that's how we get started, right? We have to figure things out because there's no book that somebody hands you when your child has a diagnosis of whatever. It doesn't matter what it is, right? As a parent, we have to figure it out because at least for me, I have never had the experience of going to a doctor or a teacher who says, I have everything you need. I'm going to tell you what you got to do. So if it exists and you got it, you are really lucky because I never found that. And so I had to go out and figure stuff out on my own, which means that I had to count on a lot of people in my life, so my mentors, to be able to guide me and show me, okay, you want to go down this pathway or that pathway, whatever it might be. And, you know, there's all kinds of things. So there's school, there's, you know, we're going to look into therapies. What type of therapies are we going to do? Which ones are invasive? Which ones are not? Where are we going to live? What are we going to eat? Because some people are really sensitive to the food they eat. So, and then the medical and just all this stuff. I'll also add that my son, yes, he has autism, but he also has epilepsy, which at the moment, that's actually the bigger factor in his life. He was not a child with epilepsy. He developed epilepsy at the age of 17. So at 28, we're still, even though it's been 11 years now, which is kind of hard for me to believe, still trying to figure that one out. So, you know, every pathway really, it's a challenge, but hopefully you will do what I try to do, and it's learn from the lessons. Because before I came on with you guys, I was in an IEP meeting. Every meeting I'm in, and I go to lots of IEP meetings for a long time now, I learned something. So I hope that no matter what you're doing, if you're going to your own IEP, to your child's IEP, or your friend's IEP, or if you're an advocate, you're going to IEPs, that you are open to always being a sponge of information, because you will gain information in every meeting you go to if you're open with it. Yesterday, I was in Tallahassee, and I was sitting in the Senate Education Committee, and we were there because there were 2 bills that we wanted here that were specific to disabilities. But then they ended up talking about a bill on GEDs. And so that conversation that I was just happened to be in the room for, I was able to, in this meeting I just stepped out of, I was able to say, I know there's a bill coming down about GEDs because there's a high school kid. And we ended up talking about that. And so that's why wanted to say, always be open, attend as many things as you can, because that's how you gain more information. So we're going to talk about today is transition. And I was that mom, so you may be that mom, who, when your kids are little, you're like, I don't need to know that stuff. It can wait. I'm just trying to make it through third grade. I don't need to know that. But let me tell you, the decisions, I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. The decisions that you make early on, they have that trickle thing. It's like a domino thing. And I don't mean to scare you, but there's some decisions, if they're made early without a very thoughtful, sort of grouped come together kind of moment, like, all right, we got to make sure we're making good decisions. You can inadvertently make decisions, particularly related to placement, that will affect your child well into their adulthood. So there's things you need to be mindful of. I'm going to touch on those. But the importance of transition cannot be underestimated, and you need to make sure, and it is complicated. So I don't mean to make this light. And this is gonna be like just I'm gonna cover a bunch of different things, and I don't mean to be overwhelming. So if I talk about something and you're like, oh, I don't know what she's talking about. If you just want to make a note to yourself, because we're not going to have a whole lot of time today, because I have a lot to have a discussion, to write that down. My contact information is at the end. So you can just reach out to me and we can speak about whatever that specific topic is, because transition in itself is huge. And the one other thing I want to say before I get started is when we look at our lifetime, okay, so let's say this is a lifetime. This is the amount of time we've been in school, and it's to prepare us for the rest. So if we don't do this part as good as we possibly can, we're setting the rest of our life up for not great outcomes. So when you have a school that you're dealing with and they are resistant to certain things, inclusion and truly direct and intensive instruction, and what does that look like? And I'll get into that. You have to remind them, because I remind them, you know what? Kid is a kid for a minute. And the decisions that you guys around this table are all making are going to affect that kid like forever, literally forever. And I don't know if you want to do this, but I do it as an advocate, and I can do it because I have a mom who was a child of a very abusive parent. And my mother is 75-ish years old, and she has given me permission to tell the story. She still lives with the garbage that happened to her when she was a child. And so sometimes I use that in IEP meetings, because most humans can relate to that. And they can think, oh, wow, yeah, stuff that I went through as a kid, that affects me today. And so do the decisions that IEP teams make. So sometimes if you need to pull that out of your hat, just pull it out, because it's effective. So, all right, let me share my screen.
And Stacey, I just want to let people know that we will share your presentation to everyone after. So you don't need to screenshot every single slide.
All right, let's see if I can. I'm using a different computer, so can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you. All right, so we're just, I like to start with great expectations, because if you have low expectations, then that's what you're gonna get. So, and I know that it's a stretch sometimes, because you see the needs of yourself maybe, or of your child. If you're here, learning more about your child and their transition, we have a tendency, and listen, I'm guilty. And I'm really fortunate that my son proved me wrong a lot of times, where I would be like, oh no, I don't think he's gonna be able to do that. I don't think that's gonna work out. It's just, he's not, that's not in his wheelhouse. And then he would be like, it would happen. And then I'd be like, all right, you have to stop that. So sometimes we got to get out of our own way. All right. So what are the goals? So, what are your goals for yourself? What are your goals for your child? Because you have to have goals. So is this your goal? Now, some people would look at, this is a sheltered workshop. So sheltered workshops most definitely used to be more popular. And it's where you group a bunch of people, if you've never seen one before, if you come into the partners program, the homework on the first session is really to go see something like this. So if you've never seen one, I can almost guarantee you've got one in your area, sadly. But you can go see one and see what a sheltered workshop looks like. Now, federally, so the federal government, even though they're in chaos about a lot of stuff, the one thing that pretty much both sides can agree on is that, you know, we need to have more opportunities and more options for people with disabilities. And so that means that the funding to segregated settings is going down. And so I have known really very sweet, very nice, well-intended people who have either worked for or owned shelter workshops over my lifetime. And I have given them the heads up. If you want to continue to make money, you need to figure out how to have your workshop, or whatever you want to call it, inclusive. Meaning you need to get people out into the real world of work, and not a bunch of people with disabilities sitting together. And you have people who are typically developing, walking around, basically monitoring what they do, telling them what they do, how to do it. And I do not like shelter workshops, in case you can't get that feeling from what I'm saying. Or how about this, right? Being a barista. I don't know, some days I want to be a barista, forget about this other stuff. Working with a crew, right? Out in the community, whether it's electrical or whatever. I mean, we count on people that wear hard hats in our lives every day, all the time. Or here, being a veterinary technician, working with animals, working in like an Office Depot, a Home Depot, all these different distribution centers. This is my dream job. I just want you to know. When I go to my nursery down the street, I am at such peace in my head. It's such a beautiful thing. So maybe working in a nursery. Okay, and working, you know, doing culinary. So how do you get there? You get there through experiences. So you have to be with other people, other kids in school, not off to the side doing some special stuff that's not so special. So this is old school, right? This is when I was in school, we sat in rows. That they don't do that anymore. This is what most high school classrooms look like today. Now, because we're just post-COVID here, you know, there may have been, you know, there's maybe some social distancing. I see both. So like today, when I walk into a high school classroom, sometimes I do see them kind of set up in rows. But most of the time, this is what I see. The kids are, and this is intentional because they're trying to get the kids back to what we just saw. The pictures of the people that are working together on teams, right? So it's middle school. Kids sit, their groups are, their tables are kind of grouped like that. Even if you walk into elementary, most kindergarten classrooms, the kids are at round tables. They don't have desks yet. First grade through fifth grade, they batch the desks up into pods like this, where the kids are working together. Again, it's intentional to prepare them for their future. But yet, a lot of our special education classrooms look like this, which has very little planning to move forward into a workforce. And again, you know, a workforce for you may be a barista, it may be Publix, because we know Publix is the high employer of people with disabilities. But Publix, not everybody wants to work at Publix. And so I'll talk a little bit about VR in a few minutes, vocational rehabilitation. And if you or your adult child does not want to work at Publix, at your VR counselor is saying, oh, Publix, it's supposed to be about your choice. Anyway, for the moment, this is what a lot of times our special education classes look like. Or this, again, that's prepping you for a sheltered workshop. That's not preparing you for what the world looks like. Or this, right? This is actually illegal in this country, right? These are those workshops that they have in China. But yet, if we go back and we look at the comparison. These are illegal in this country. But yet, this is a shelter workshop. Okay, so I think I've made my point. So the number one best way to prepare somebody, and that's me on the horse, by the way, for the world is to not sit on the pretend horse. I would not learn how to ride a horse if I sat on a rocking horse. I'm not going to learn life job skills from sitting in a classroom that doesn't emulate the real world of work. Same thing. It's the same exact thing. All right. So vision for the future. So if you guys would just take a minute and think about your hopes and your fears about what you or your child's transition out of school, like what is that? And kind of describe. So if you would just kind of throw in the chat, like maybe one word when you think about transition. And I'm going for emotional response here. So you don't need to give me facts and things like that. But just like when you think about transition, which really means preparing for what's coming next. So school, that they say the bus stops coming, right? The bus is no longer coming. So what is your knee-jerk emotional response to that? Yeah. So if you guys will just follow along with me, yeah, independence, being worried, fear, living nervous. Emotional security. Yeah. Anxiety. Yeah. Okay. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, so you got to know the facts. So here's just some, I didn't want to get into too much, but there was a longitudinal study, and I know it's old because it's 2009, but I Googled it just a little while ago. And you know how slow things move in special education anyway. And they're all about the same, but I like this one because I like the way the numbers are kind of laid out. So in this study, 32%, 32.5% of young adults with developmental disabilities currently worked for pay. So it did go into a little bit how much they don't work. Now, I'm just going to offer one more thing before we go into the next thing here. There is a rule, it's a law that this nation has. It's called 14C. 14C is on its way out, but 14C allows employers, certain employers. So I'm not going to get into the weeds on that one because it's a big thing, but it does allow some employers to pay people with disabilities sub minimum wage. I know people who make 40s, 45, 47 cents an hour working in a shelter workshop, because shelter workshops take a lot of money to run. You got space, you got employees, right? Not the people with disabilities, people who are walking around making sure they're on task. So there's a lot of costs. And so the government 14C, so there's funding, it's government funding things. So the money comes in and it's going to the shelter workshop. And so then the people with disabilities are getting these pennies. 14C is also actually something that both Republicans and Democrats agree that we have to do something about. Now, they also realize, though, that we can't just say minimum wage for everybody, because then a lot of people count on those types of employments. I'm just going to call it a shelter workshop. So they depend upon those. So we don't want those people just to be out with nothing. So it will be a gradual fade out. And there are people like myself, there are advocates who are advocating for additional dollars because we want there to be money federally so that everybody, no matter what state you live in, that they can get to do supported employment within the communities. So not in segregated settings. So we're actually hoping to get more money for that so that it would encourage these same people who are running these shelter workshops to do supported and included employment. So kind of saying, we're going to actually pay you more money if you help that person get a job at Home Depot and you provide support on site to the guy who's working at Home Depot. So anyway, 47.7% of youth worked for pay in the last 2 years. So this is 2 years now. Versus I just put the 78.4. That's all the participants who responded because it was everybody, but 47% of them worked for pay in the last 2 years. And 29% of young adults were looking for work if they were unemployed compared to 47. So basically it means less people with disabilities are actually looking for work. And I will tell you that just in the partners in policymaking class, the students who come into the program, because it's for parents and for people with developmental disabilities. I have talked to, I've had a lot of people come through the program in the 7 years I've been running it that have disabilities that will tell me, like some of them come in, I like the one woman who's in my head right now, she has a master's degree. She has a master's degree. And I said, wow, in what? It was early childhood and just amazing, amazing stuff. And so when I asked her where she worked, she goes, oh no, I don't work. And I said, okay, how come? And she said, well, I'll lose my benefits. And I said, what? Like, you can get a job with master's degree that would give you better benefits. You could get like really good health insurance and, you know, make a lot more money than you're getting from SSI. But the fear in so many people, and I'm not going to get into the money thing today because we'll be here all day. But you just want to look into that because you can make money. You can, so I just don't let, I'm going to lose my benefits be the reason that you don't pursue like real and true employment where you can make money. Love it. Let me try this. Let's do that. Okay. So a goal without a plan is just a wish. You have to have a plan. And somebody asked me this, I think it was yesterday in Tallahassee. They said something to me about that their school said, well, the TIEP, the transition IEP is the plan. No, actually the P, we like to think the P in IEP is plan, but if you look at what IDEA says, the P actually means program. It stands for program, it's not plan. So, and then, so an IEP is not the transition plan that the law is talking about. It means like a real plan, like coming up with a plan. All right, so what should this transition plan be? So it's got to be results oriented. And if you have a younger kid, well, you have a kid in school, period, and you're going to go to an IEP meeting, I want you to pull out last year's IEP and look at this year's IEP. I don't care about what the disability is. That doesn't mean boo to me. Your child, that whoever they are, should be making progress. Some kids are going to make more progress than others. Okay, whatever. Some people that I know are a lot smarter than me. They make more progress than I do. That's okay. Well, we should always be making progress. So do not let a school say, well, you know, they've plateaued. The school says plateaued to me, I want to like, my head's going to combust. Nobody should plateau. There's no reason. You're here today, you're learning, you're getting some new information. Everybody should be continuing to go to the next step. So be mindful of that. Focus on the education training needed to help students reach their long-term potential or long-term goals. You know, you always want to be thinking about the future, even when your kid is young. What are they interested in? What do they gravitate towards? A lot of times when I'm talking to a parent for the first time, and if it's on the phone, because I'll say, what does your kid like to do? Oh, I don't know. I don't know. And I'll say, well, what are they doing right now? You're talking to me. So what are they doing? Oh, so sometimes we have to really stop and think, what do our kids like? What do they do when you're not giving them something to do? When they're not at therapy or they're not at school, what do they like to do? Because so many times that can then manifest later into like a job where they can actually make money. Facilitate the movement from school to post-school activities. And I'll get into that more. Be based on the student's needs, taking into account their preference and strengths and interests. All right, so why is it so important? It prepares them for change, because guess what? Change is coming. Change is coming for you, whoever you are. We all go through change. Most of us do not like change. Some of us like to really keep our feet in cement and not move. But change, right? They say it's like death and taxes, right? It's coming. You're gonna have to deal with it. But as parents, I am guilty. We like to coddle and protect, and we don't want them to be bullied, and we don't want things to be hard and all that stuff. Well, guess what? That's not life. And we do them a serious disservice when we overprotect. So if you're like me and you are a helicopter mom and dad, have to cut off one of the blades, maybe, not sure, but just one at a time. You don't have to be drastic, but you gotta, things that need to, I don't know about you, but for me, how I learn best is when things are hard. And sometimes after I make a big old mistake, I have to regroup and go, wow, okay, that was not good. How am I going to fix that? And your kids may need help with that. They may need you or their teachers to sit and go, okay, so this is what happened, and we don't want that to happen again. And what can we do different? This meeting I was just in, the dad kind of lost it. And after the meeting, I regrouped with mom and dad, and I said, okay, that can't happen again. And so how are we going to do things different? So even with us as parents, we got to learn about how we're going to do things different. But if we don't allow our kids to struggle, they don't learn. And then they end up as adults who have no problem solving skills. And that's not, and again, it doesn't matter to me what level your child or yourself is. That's IQ nonsense is irrelevant to me. You have to be able to, some of us are going to have bigger areas that we're going to struggle. And, so I don't want you to all think that, oh, we should just throw caution to the wind. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that's how we get better at the things in our lives, is by having things be difficult sometimes. Okay, so ensure that appropriate steps are being taken, help students become more self-determined. Lots of talk in Tallahassee yesterday about advocating for self-determination and people with disabilities making their own choices, but they can't get to that point of being good at that. They might really think that that's what they want, but they don't get good at being that if they don't go through this plan. Okay, so understanding their disability, that's super important. Make better, more appropriate choices for themselves, and then take ownership of their own lives. Let me take a look at the chat real quick. Yeah. Okay. All right. So the IEP. So I'm just going to go over this just a little bit. So what you want to do is you want to, in the IEP plan, like a planning as you guys are sitting together, identify students' post-school goals. So what are they going to be doing later on? Do not allow the plan, like the post-secondary goals. I have some, I'm going to offer you guys a few in a minute. It should not say that Joey will be participating in a sheltered workshop. Will Joey end up in the sheltered workshop? I don't know. Maybe if that's what you want, if that's what he wants, so I don't know. But that's not a goal. I know some people who end up there because maybe they think that that's what they want in the end. I don't know, but that's not a goal. So remember, goals are for what we're reaching for, not what we're settling for. So be careful with that. Determine the present levels of performance. So who are they today? Develop annual goals. And again, an annual goal should be able to be an annual goal. You should not see the same goals on your IEP year after year after year. And it happens because I see them every day. So pay attention to that. Identify needed transition services. I'm going to give you some examples of that. Computer's spreadsheet today. Okay, so here's kind of what I was leading to before. You have to be aware of the impacts to state standards. All right, so think about where your kid is spending their day. This is predominantly in elementary school, that question there. If your kid is in elementary school and they are in a special program classroom, they're on standards, but they're in a special program standards. In case you don't know that, they're not following the state standards in there on grade level. They'll tell you that they are, but it would be almost impossible for any human, any really good teacher, to have 8 to 12 kids in their classroom with varying needs. Each kid is unique on a whole totally different ball field. To be able to teach all those kids, the kids who are on standards at the standard, the state standard, and then teaching the kids who are off standards where they're at. I don't know how any human could do that. That would just not happen. So if you have a kid who's in that classroom, who's on regular standards, you need to be asking for inclusive education with support. The only time that I'll say, okay, no, I get the argument against that and to have them in a special program is if behavior and significant behavior is at play. Because if your kid is having significant behaviors in a regular classroom, all the other kids are looking at them. And so it's not going to be good for their social development. It's not going to be good for their academic improvement. So then you have to get more creative and more thoughtful in the process. But I have that on there because what a lot of parents they don't know. So kid stays in this special program all through elementary. And then guess what? Middle school's coming. And then the school says to you, well, they're going to middle school. So we're going to go ahead and take them off standards. And when you take a kid off of standards, because that's if you go into, it's actually 7th grade, it's not 6th grade, but into 7th grade, it has to do with teacher certification. So in 7th grade, if you get a teacher who's certified in teaching middle school science, they're a middle school science teacher. That's what they can teach. So if you have a kid who needs one teacher all day, they're going to be in that special classroom, and that special classroom is not going to be on regular standards. So that's state statute. And if you want to contact me, we can talk more about why that is, because that's like a whole training in itself. But I just bring this up because you have to be really mindful of what you do. Once you modify curriculum, you remove the kid from standards. You can't modify, you can accommodate. But when you take a kid off of regular standards, and it's not always a bad thing. So I don't want you to hear me. Hopefully you're not hearing me say, oh, don't take your kid off standards. I'm not saying that. It is appropriate for some students to be taken off of regular standards. But I just want you to realize that you're shutting the door for an 8-year-old. You're shutting the door on them going into a college degree seeking program and to a trade school for a regular certification. And that's not coming for another 10 or so years, but you're shutting the door then. Now, I gotta do some more research on the new thing that's being presented about GEDs, because like the kid I just finished up with, that's what I was talking to them about, because it's kind of a mess. I mean, people call advocates when there's mess, right? So it's kind of a mess. But for that kid, I'm thinking we might need to do a GED on him. So that might be an option in your future, but it's not something to count on for an 8-year-old. So just be really mindful of that the decisions that you make early on, they're going to affect them later. All right, so this is a potential. So moving between standards options. So you could have a kid who's in 6th grade, who's off of regular standards, and you're like, you know what, we're putting them back on standards. But if the kid just spent the last, 3-4 years in a special education classroom, that means that bar was lowered. And now you're going to throw them into 7th grade where everything's going to be on level. It would take a minor miracle for that kid to be able to handle that. I couldn't do that. You couldn't just put me in a class teaching Mandarin and it's in Mandarin 2 and I don't know any Mandarin and I'm going to drown. So again, that's why it's really important. You got to be just, again, really thoughtful. If it's the right decision to make, it's the right decision to make. Now, also, just so that you know, the law changed this last year. Students have to have a documented IQ of 67 in order to be removed from regular standards. It used to be 69. It was not only 69, but it also, the law gave, this was in state statute, it gave the IEP team a little bit more power. Like it talks like about, you could look at behavior scales, scores, and a couple other things. But now it's pretty straightforward, 67 or lower IQ to be removed from standards. So if you've got that 71 kid, school's gonna be hard, but you cannot take legally a 71 IQ kid off of regular standards. All right. So, I just want to make a statement here. It's through the inclusive education for kids with disabilities. That's how kids remain on that pathway towards an adulthood that kind of looks like these people sitting here working together. Again, a lot of people with disabilities have friends that are other people with disabilities. And if that's what they so choose, then that's what they choose. But if they're going to have meaningful and gainful employment, chances are really very high, like 99.9%, that they're going to be working with people that look like these people in this picture. Just the regular population of people. So in the US, we say that 14% of people are people with disabilities. So if they're in a classroom with where it's more than 14% of kids with disabilities, they're not really being prepared for what life's going to be after school. All right, so I'm not going to read the law, but this is IDEA, so the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and I put in red there what I want you to pay special attention to. So the education has to be results oriented, meaning is you could make in process, and facilitating the child's movement from school to post-school activities. So this is what your schools are supposed to be doing. So if you want to use the law, which is a really good thing as an advocate, so if you're advocating, including post-secondary education, vocational education, integrated employment, including, that says it in the law, including supported employment. You don't have to go, well, he's not gonna be able to work on his own. In the law, it says, including supported employment, continuing and adult education, adult services, independent living, community participation. These are the things that's written into educational law that your schools are supposed to be doing as they're working on transition and transitioning the student out of school. So voc rehab, vocational rehabilitation, a lot of times when I even bring up the topic, people are like, oh, voc rehab. It's another system that you have to understand. If you can wrap your brain around it, you actually would be pretty happy with what you can get. But if you don't, you're going to hate it because you're going to listen to other people that go, oh, no, they don't do anything. They actually do a lot. But again, and even my own personal experience with my son, I had to know more than his counselor because she didn't know. She even said to me at one point, when I don't remember what we were talking about, but she's like, Stacey, that's above my pay grade. So I'm really sorry to tell you that, but you got to know this stuff because VR can be, they could pay for so much stuff, so much stuff. Any educational training. If your kid is going or yourself are going into working with computers, they'll pay for your computer. If you're going to be a chef and go to culinary school, they'll pay for all your supplies. They'll pay for your fancy white hat and your smock and all that stuff. But you have to understand the stuff. All right. So again, I just wanted to put in there. So it includes individuals with disabilities, including individuals with the most severe disabilities. Again, you don't want to you have a VR counselor said, oh, no, they're really not going to get our services because they got too much. It says right there in the statute. And then the bottom one there, individuals with disabilities must be provided opportunities to obtain gainful employment in what? Not shelter workshops, integrated settings. So you maybe, when you get this, I guess you'll get this later. If you need to take this with you when you meet with your VR counselor, this is the Rehab Act of 1992. This isn't new stuff. It hasn't changed. It's there. All right. So back to IDEA. So an IDEA, that's like kids in school. In 2004, this hasn't changed since then. But this was added then. So that transition language appears in the IEP by age 14. In Florida, Allison Tant, Representative Tant, got a bill through last year where we actually moved to age 12. But it's really just to begin the conversations. So you're not going to be writing like the first one there, those post-secondary goals for a 12-year-old, because a lot of times those kids are just coming out of elementary school if they've been retained. So you want the post-secondary goals from age 14 and up, based on the age-appropriate assessments. Almost every IEP that I read for transition, and it could be like 12th graders even. I'll look on your IEP document. It says, it's usually on the first 1 or 2 pages, it'll say, the heading will say assessments. For a kid in transition age years, it better have some type of transition assessment. When I see one that actually has one in there, I'm like, oh, wow. I'm super impressed because I never see them. They should be in there, but I hardly ever see them. And that's when they know an advocate's coming. So for you guys who are going on your own, and you don't have an advocate, I don't even know what to say, but you have to know your rights. Providing a summary of performance. So that's when your kid is moving on, right? So they're 22 or they're younger and they have graduated, they're moving on, they're done. Schools are supposed to write a summary of performance, which is basically who is this person? And so that they can use that for when they move on to post-secondary education or job. So, all right, so the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, so this was back in also 2014. So if you, I'm not going to get into a lot of this because again, it's like its own thing, but if you go to rehabworks.org, I think it's rehabworks, and somebody can do that real quick. There is a video on there, they call it STAR, and they also call it pre-ETS. So pre-ET, I like to call pre-ETS because the whole STAR thing I think is kind of silly, but it's pre-ETS, but on the site, it'll call it STAR. If you click on that video, you're going to see what they're supposed to be providing for ages 15, this is VR, through the WIOA, that's what you're looking at there, 15 to 23-year-olds. Really some cool stuff, but most people don't even know about it. So watch that really short video and just check that out. All right, so what's the goal of IDA? Again, this is the law. It's to promote maximum independence in adulthood. Some people are going to be completely independent. Some people are not. Some people are going to need continual support for their entire life. Okay, but the goal is for them to be the maximum to their potential. The goal of transition plan is to promote that maximum transition planning into adulthood, and they should address their interest, aptitude, plans regarding education, career, housing, employment, basically anything and everything to get them ready. All right, so career assessments. Again, I kind of said this already, but I want to get to okay, I think it's the next slide. But just on the transition assessments, these are some of the things that need to be individualized. They need to be ongoing. One transition assessment from the age of 14 to 22, is not enough. And then futures oriented, right? It needs to be about like what's coming. All right. Okay, so yeah, I apologize. Okay, so here's just a few that I just happen to like. So that teach transition assessment profile, the Ansel Casey. I don't know if anybody in here knew Dr. Herm Fishbein, but he was one of my mentors, and he was an amazing, amazing human. And he taught me so much about transition. And he would always talk about the Ansel Casey. He really preferred that. And he was like, I don't care the functioning level of the individual because it just is really good. It's very well-rounded. And then age appropriate, there's one that O'Callaghan makes, the AATA. So you can look at that one. And there are tons more. Actually, I think I have, yeah, here, look, I have some more. So there's something called career cruising, and there's a matchmaker and ONET. So ONET, I have to say, actually, I think it was a VR counselor who told me about that one. That one is really good, and it like for all of us. It's not; these are not special needs stuff. So ONET is good for everybody, and it will help you. Like I have a girl who wanted to. She said she wanted to be a veterinarian. She's not on regular standards. Math and science are just a no-go for her. But through ONET and really looking at jobs and opportunities and requirements and all that stuff, now she's in a vet tech program that's modified. So she's not going to get the regular vet tech certification, but she's so awesome with the animals that she's on a community-based instruction at a veterinary center, and she's probably going to get offered a job. She's 21, so this is going to be her last year. She turns 22 over the summer, and I'm pretty confident they're going to give her a job. And the parents kind of discovered all that and the different opportunities through ONET. So check that out. And then there's some others there you guys can read those. All right. All right, so what are the services? That's whatever services they need in order to be able to attain what they're going to need, looking forward. All right, so again, you just need all those IEPs from age 14. And again, even though we're talking in Florida, transition at age 12, we're really looking at age 14 and up for those goals. Those should appear on the first few pages of your IEP. They're not IEP goals. They're not in the regular goal section. These are post-secondary goals. A little bit different. All right, I kind of said that already. So I want to get to I mean, this, you have to have goals. Okay, all right, so it's broken into 3 different areas. So the first one is training and education. So that's like, where are they gonna go, right? Are they gonna go to college? They're gonna 4-year college, 2-year college, gonna go to technical school? Are they gonna do on-the-job training, apprenticeships? Employment. So is it gonna be competitive, supported, customized, unpaid employment? You know, like, are they gonna do volunteer stuff? Are they gonna go into the military? Independent living. So those goals in there would be things that just we need to live, right? Can we take a shower? Can we do that on our own? Can we brush our teeth? Can we make an appointment? Do we understand money? Sometimes I don't even understand money. So, being able to figure this stuff out. And so here I have some samples here. So Jamal will work in his uncle's printing business, starting out as an apprentice. And so these goals are at the beginning of your IEP, because what they're meant to do is have the team thinking, all right, so remember Jamal, he wants to work in his uncle's printing business as an apprentice. So what are some of the skills that we need to write short-term goals for? They're going to help him get to that. And it really causes the team to think, what's a printing business like? We're going to have to do some research on this. Somebody might actually need to go see it. Karen will attend Metro Tech in the radiology program and work in the healthcare industry. Sophie is going to work part-time in a retail entertainment store with assistance from supported employment specialists. So it's built in right into the goal. She's going to need support on the job. Marcy will become a daycare employee and earn continuing education credits through job-related trainings. Jeremy's going to attend career tech welding program and obtain employment as an underwater welder. Of course, that job, that's a very high-level job. But I just wanted to give you an example that it doesn't matter if your kid is that college-bound kid, because you guys know this, right? We have kids with disabilities that, one of my son's friends is an aeronautical engineer. He has autism. I mean, that guy could be offered a job at NASA, which, by the way, if you didn't know this, NASA is actually loaded with people on the spectrum. So there are certain industries that it's just, they find their tribe, and all these engineers, people, and the way that they think and their minds are mapped, they just fit like right in over there. So it could be anything. All right, so what needs to be included? So community-based instruction, that goes back to me sitting on the horse. And this was something that Dr. Fishbein was really just drove home, was we cannot have, especially 18 to 22-year-olds, spending their day in a classroom and think that when the day the bus stop's coming, they're going to be able to just go get a job and work alongside people who don't have disabilities. Like, oh, well, we've prepared you in the classroom. No, that doesn't work. So you need to build in community-based instruction. They're off campus, they're out there. Developing quality transition IEPs. Interagency collaboration, that's getting APD and VR, Career Source. We have Career Source Florida, we have career sources across the state. Program improvement. Maybe your program needs to be improved. Contact your district, see how they could support it. The Florida Inclusion Network is also accessible to anybody in the state of Florida. They are funded by the Department of Education, although my experience is that they almost seem like they're outside of it, but they are funded that way. So get them to come into your school. Look at your special programs. How can we make them more inclusive? Self-determination and student-directed IEPs, which again, could be its own training. School and post-school transition options, supported employment. All right, so here's just some steps. Student has to become involved in their IEP. They have to at least attend. So now I will say this though, if you are a parent and you know it's going to be contentious and you got some stuff that you don't like what's going on and you're going to need to have that moment, don't do that with kids in there. So if I know I need to get through some of the rough stuff in the meeting, and I do not want the student seeing me give the school a hard time, because sometimes I have to do that, I will say, we're not going to bring them in yet. We need to have a conversation. And then we're going to bring the student in and we'll kind of talk about what they feel like. If they're a kid who is pretty, because I go to IEPs for everybody. So if the kid is fairly capable of being able to not need a lot of preparation, those kids tend to be, of course, it's an easier process. They come in, and let me tell you, almost all the time, it's me. It is rare for a school to say, so Joey, what do you think about, like, what accommodations do you think you need in the classroom? Or do you think that the time that you have is enough time? It's almost always me. So you guys need to be that person in your meetings. Joey, what do you think about this? Now, if you have a kid that he's not able to verbally communicate or needs a lot of preparation, then that needs to happen before the meeting. I've got a couple kids that I work with who the teachers and the parent works with them on creating like a 6 to 10 slide on PowerPoint, and they show that during the meeting. So they're able to kind of share, what they need, what they think about things, stuff like that. And then helping the student develop their course of study, which is basically, what kind of classes do I want to take? Student develops connection with those post-school agencies, right? So the parent and the family really is working together. Student works on attaining IEP, personal goals, and they build their summary performance. So I'm at the end, what am I looking for now? Here's just a list of some career prep activities. So you're going to do that assessment. The career exploration is really got to get out of the school and needs to be done on a job site. And now that we have in Florida, we have deferment, and there's a lot to that. I think I mentioned it in a minute, a little bit more, but a kid can technically graduate, walk across the stage. They walk across the stage with all the other kids' graduation, and then they defer, which means they are going to return and continue to receive services by your school system until the age of 22. Any student with an IEP can do that. Even if they were a kid who you're like, I don't know, he might go to college. That kid can also defer and look at and consider deferment programs, which could include on-the-job training. So the job shadowing means they're on a job site and someone's kind of there helping them mold their skills. High school vocational training, apprenticeship programs, social skills instruction. Let me just add, social skills issues are the #1 factor that gets you fired. It is not, can you do the skill? It is, do you know what not to say to your boss? And what not to do that's socially inappropriate in front of other people. So that needs to be really important in your IEP meetings before your kid gets to this age. So maybe that means, like, I have some kids where we'll give them like a daily job where they have to go, and the school has to be intentional. So it takes work. Who has he not met? Maybe it's the lady who makes copies in the front office, but meeting new people, delivering things around campus so that he or she's kind of put in a position where they have to go interact with other people, because those social skills are huge. And then self-determination and self-advocacy. I know some families that don't want to have that conversation about their child's disability with their child. I don't think that that's wise. And I've talked to many people with disabilities, adults, who are, I don't know, they're very upset as adults that their parents did not share that information with them because their life was still hard. And they just thought there was something wrong with them and not that they actually had a diagnosis of something. And they, oh, okay, well, that's why things were hard. So just, I mean, it's, a personal decision, of course, but it's important. All right, so I'm Determined. You guys can check out imdetermined.org. There's videos, teaching materials. So for yourselves, for your teachers, really great resource. Ahead, also the Association of Higher Education and Disability, wonderful resources on both of those. So check those out. Right, so just, there's this, I think this is really important. And you could, I think she actually has a podcast, Angela Lee Duckworth. And this is not, she's not special needs education. She's not, that's not her. She's written a book and done tons of research on just our success as people, and it's grit. Grit is the #1 predictor of whether we're going to be successful in life. And that goes back to how I started this conversation. If we want to always protect our kids, because that's how we develop grit. When things are hard and we're like, oh, nuts. Okay, that didn't work out. I had to do that over again. Doggone it. But guess what? That's how we get our grit. And that's on our tenacity. But if we never have to do that, we don't develop grit. So, all right, I threw this one up. That's why it looks kind of funny, but I thought this one was really good. It was from another training I did. So that's why it just looks weird here. But promoting self-determined behavior. So what can you do? Teach decision-making skills. And you know, I get it. I want this here. Here's like an activity for you to try. If you're like, oh no, my kid I'm pretty good at making decisions. It could be something as simple as, do you want to see this movie or this movie? If the person, including yourself, is like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. You should be able to choose a movie like that. So if you can't make a choice over something as simple as what movie I want to see on Friday night, then you struggle with making decisions. And those need to be taught. You don't just get good at making decisions. You have to practice it. So allow the student to take risks. Being safe. I'm not saying go jumping off a cliff, but you know, you got to start really small. Know when to step back. Parents got to know when to step back and when to step in. And it is an art. So you want to be there, but you're not the helicopter. You're kind of in the back here, ready to do what you need to do, but giving them the opportunity to start at least. And then you step in. Celebrate accomplishments. You know, I don't think I need to go on that. You guys figure that one out on your own. Develop skills to communicate clearly, assertively, and persistently. You know, you got to be persistent with, and you know, especially when we're faced with a lot of heavy caseloads and not enough money, you know, you got to keep chasing it down. Learn how to ask for assistance. I'm still learning that. I need to do that more. I need to ask people, help me, please. So teach the kids how to ask for help. Learn about community resources, and self-determination has to be taught, and it has to be practiced. We do not get better at being self-determined without it. Here's just some agencies. I think you guys are probably familiar with all these that you want to tap into when you're looking at moving on from school. Final thoughts. So transition planning needs to start early. Although I fought it at the early years, I probably began to seriously think about it. It was probably because I had all these people around me going, are you planning? So it probably started when he entered middle school, I would think, like 6th grade. And, you know, I was telling the story the other day to some people in Tallahassee that, you know, I've been an advocate since, well, of course, I started advocating for my son when he was like 2, but like a formal advocate, I think he was like 4. So by the time he entered elementary school, I was already a practicing advocate. And I was on many committees related to education at the time because that's where he was at. So I was very heavily involved. Everybody in my school system knew who I was. They were looking at my face all the time. There was none of this stuff. You actually had to show up. And really, I encourage you all to show up, because I know that the younger generation, because I have a lot of them on my caseload, so the young parents, they think that posting things to social media is advocacy and it's effective. It is not. Legislators don't care about it. They just think that you're a little crazy if you post something that's, you know, antagonistic on social media. You have to show up. Show up at meetings. You have to talk to people. You can't just post to social media or send a nasty email. That's not going to work. But so I would have to show up. And so I had done, so he has autism. So my school district, I'm in Broward. It's the 6th largest in the country. It's a very large school system. I had the head of autism with me at my transition to middle school meeting. So in 5th grade, his butt was in the chair next to me. And I remember him saying to me at one point, why am I here? And I said, because you need to see this. You need to see what goes on in these meetings. And I said, this one isn't even going to be a real one for you because it's me. I'm already an advocate. But I think it's important. And he humored me, so he was there. And we talked about planning and how we're going to do this transition to middle school and how complicated it's going to be and all the supports will be in place from day one and all this good stuff. And I'm a big believer in meeting with your school the week before school starts. And they don't like it. They're going to argue with you. Oh, we're busy. We can't do. My boy would not have started school if I didn't meet with him. So we would always meet. And the week before, it was actually the Friday before his first day of middle school, met with the team of teachers. And they started going over, because I kind of went over, okay, so these are just some of the things that he needs, and it makes him a little bit different than most of kids probably in your class. And I always create a 1-page cheat sheet. I call it the day in the life. So I handed that out and I said, we're not going to go over the IEP. I just want you to be familiar with who he is and go over some of these things. And I'm big on body language. So I saw teachers sit back in their seat, arms are folded, kind of that, "Oh, what does she want?" expression on their face. So I'm reading all that and I'm like, oh man, this is not good. And so then one of the brave teachers, because they're like, oh man, she's an advocate. What are we gonna do? So one of the brave ones says, well, this is middle school. We do things a little bit different in middle school. So I said, well, I'm an advocate and I've been in many middle school meetings. I'm pretty well aware of middle school. And before I had my children, I worked for the school system. So I think I have a pretty decent background on what happens in middle school. Well, he's not going to get this and he's not going to do that. And all this, I was like, what? And I looked at the person in Broward County, they're called an ESC specialist. So she attended the meeting at the elementary school where we talked about all this. And I said, you were in that meeting. We talked about all this, and all these teachers all this is new to them. So I don't know if we need to regroup and re-meet at another time or what, but this is not going to happen. And so she's like, yes, we did. And we really planned and whatever. But everything told me this was not going to go well. But, I do like to give teachers the opportunity. So they heard me out that day and I thought, well, we're going to see. The third day of school, he comes home having a holy heart. It was just horrible. Everything that I had kind of thought was going to happen based upon the Friday meeting was happening. So I called my head of autism and I said, you were sitting there with me. It's as if that meeting didn't even take place. And this is me. And he said to me, I know. I don't know what to say. I can't believe it. And the problem is that this stuff happens to an advocate. I can only begin to imagine what happens to people when they go on their own and they don't have all this information. So that is probably what shoved me into, girl, you better get on this transition planning thing. And that's when I got engaged. So don't be mean and don't wait for that shoe to fall to where you're like, I'm going to sue y'all. I'm filing due process because this is not going to happen. And I just to tell you, I'll be quick. But what happened was I said to him, the head of autism, I'm like, I don't even know what to do. And because I'm going to file. And he said, well, why don't you call the principal and see what she says? So now I'll also add that I had an older kid already at the school. So I already knew the school. I knew the principal knew me. So I called her and I told her what had happened. And she said, well, what do you want? And I said, you know what? I'm not going to tell you what to do. It's not my school. You're the principal. So you tell me what you think. Because sometimes advocates out there, the kiss of death can be you telling them what to do, because if they do it and it doesn't work, they're pointing the finger right at you. So that's a trap. So don't get caught in the trap. So I said, I'm not going to tell you what to do. So she goes, all right, let me get back to you. Hung up the phone. A few minutes later, she calls me back. She goes, I found a great group of teachers for him. We're changing all his teachers tomorrow. That group of teachers were truly phenomenal. Just like knock your socks off teachers. And so, of course, then I said to her, okay, so 7th and 8th grade, you're choosing his teachers. And she did. And so I really think it was 3 yucky days. But I think that by building the relationships with your principal, holding them accountable, you're not accountable. They're accountable. You send your kid to school, you're counting on them to provide their education. So reminding them sometimes, you know what, that's not my call. Not my call to fix your problems. You're the boss. So you tell me what you're going to do. And then you don't have to go along with what they say. But what I have gained is when I do that, even as an advocate in a meeting, sometimes they'll say to me, well, Stacey, what program do you think we should use? Oh, no, honey, that's not how this works. I could just tell you that I have experience with this one, and this one, and I think these are pretty good. But you guys need to decide, because I'm not the teacher. I'm not in the classroom. And the teachers need to kind of know the students, hopefully, to help them figure out which one's going to be best. But anyway, should start early. Early placement impacts later outcomes. And again, I'm not saying that we should not have certain kids that are removed from regular standards. I'm just saying, don't be the parent who is when the kid's in 10th grade going, oh, nuts. Now my kid wants to go to college, and woulda, coulda, shoulda. Maybe we should have pushed the system a little bit more to offer more to get them prepared for that. It's just, and again, now you guys know there's college programs, Think College, and I don't think I included that here, but Think College, you could just look up Think College. There are college programs that are not degree-seeking programs that, students off standards could go to if they were interested. All right, it's got to be person-centered. So don't allow everybody to get off on all these tangents and talk a million different. All right, Joey is why we're here. We're talking about Joey. It needs to be focused on Joey, not about your budget, not about how many staff members you have. And I'm not saying that the issues with our schools in not having all the staff they wish they had isn't a real issue. But I will also say, in every case that I have to file due process because a kid doesn't have the support they need, that support magically appears. I don't know how it happens, but it's this magic thing. Somebody takes their wand out, because when you have a good case and you know that your child's not getting what they're supposed to be getting, you're gonna get it. But you're only gonna get it if you are advocating for them and letting them know what you know. The plan must link activities and classes, learning. Everything needs to be together and link in with the post-secondary goals. Parents, you guys are critical partners. Students should take an increasingly active role, and interagency collaboration is essential. Again, I go back to the high expectations. And Sam Walton, in case you guys don't know, that's like Walmart. Okay, Sam Walton is the Walmart guy. And that was one of the first things he said as he was developing his empire, is you have to have expectations, they have to be high. And that's me. So I have a lot, I put my website on there because there's actually, if you go on there and you scroll to the bottom of the screen, I have a lot of articles. Some of the articles have videos. I also have a YouTube channel. I haven't kept up with it lately, but if it's just Stacey Hoaglund, I think, and it's Stacey Hoaglund or Stacey Hoaglund Advocate. There's lots of training videos